Oh, we are live. Yeah, we're I sure have, John. How are you? Hiking. All right, very nice. I Cool. I've also been feeling an urge to actually move instead of sitting around a lot. I haven't Yeah, I haven't done anything yet, but I want to. All right. You heard that live, folks. John and I are committing to doing something physical in the near future. Well, you lovely people at home are watching World Salad, a bi-weekly world building podcast, Twitch stream, whatever you want to call it. We sit here for about an hour every 2 weeks, coming up with elements you can use in your own RPGs settings and sessions at home. We come up with a bevy of things from characters to locations to items to monsters, all anything that could populate your complex, beautiful world. Last show, we debuted a new segment called 60-Minute Settlement, where we narrow our focus to building a specific location, someplace that people live. And we thought it went really well last week, what of odd. So we're going to run that back. Dice Rooney. You made a box? Oh, okay. Ooh. Yeah, and because the whole theme of the night is settlements, like a place people live, we're more than likely going to be building the town that this whole thing takes place in. We gotta love dogs. So last week we came up with this whole thing literally the few minutes before the show began. So we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. What John's referring to when we rolled two things, I believe we rolled once for genre, and then we did roll for something else to help set up crime. Uh, I think we've already established that we're in a horror type setting. I don't know if crime is the most. I mean, crime most definitely exists. Okay, yeah. I think I think I think stick to a D6, but one is gonna mean like a hamlet, like not something super tiny. Six is gonna be like something a la Manhattan. Sure, yeah, good. True, true, yeah, yeah. Okay, yep, yep. Got it. Okay. Agreed. Yeah, yeah. It can be very grounded or it can be kind of supernatural. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Got it. So kind of like a Grimm's fairy tales kind of thing, where the monsters are out there, you won't necessarily interact with them, but if you do, you're kind of screwed. Well, I've never seen the X Files, so I don't. That's not a great reference point for me personally. But if it works for the audience, that's totally fine. So I don't know what that is. Scooby Doo, except the movies where magic is real. Yeah, yeah, more threats, less rivals. D10 sounds good. Yeah. Just make the pitch, John. Love it. Hmm. Hmm. The role playing game, no, but I've watched Scooby Doo, the first season of Buffy. I've seen Supernatural. I've watched enough things where, yeah. Well, yeah, what I'm gathering so far is it's a very localized threat. Like this is not something that plagues the whole world. It's really just centered on this town. And while it is prevalent and there are whispers about it, it's sufficiently separated from your average everyday person where most people can be skeptical. Mhm. I don't know if we necessarily re-roll, but I think if we flesh out more details, we can reinterpret the roles. So yeah, yeah. For reference to the viewer, a lot of these scales we came up with last week to work for that particular settlement. These are just guidelines. So if they don't work for what we're currently doing, we can try to reinterpret them, come up with new ones, or just outright ignore them and move on to stuff. I don't think so. So maybe this is kind of like not like the lottery, but there might be this underlying threat of cannibalism where no one it's like an open. Yeah, yeah. So roll on the food table. Let's see if this is a thing we have to worry about. I would say it's like feast or famine. It's either gonna like not be important at all or be incredibly important. So I would almost say just flip a coin for it. Yeah, roll a d2. Why not? I mean, it, we're in a city, so I would say this gets like another d4, but it's like a d4 plus 4. Yeah, because like when I'm thinking about the settlement itself, the city, I don't think like the hospitals are all going to be run down. I think within a specific storyline, there might be an issue. But when I think of a functioning city, I don't think there's going to be like medical problems, especially. John, you have convinced me. Roll that d10. Yes, fantastic. So medicine is not that prevalent. Yeah, so I think we can really use this to inform more about the setting and the kind of threat we're facing. Because it okay, and technology may very well tell us when this takes place. Not so much when. So this is probably modern, if not a little bit futuristic. Yeah, yeah. I definitely, yeah. I think going back to the genre, we need to figure out what's threatening this town, or what is horrific about this this city. I've never seen Hostel. I've I've never seen Hostel, but I like the approach we're taking, where a two for threat is more of a grounded threat, not a supernatural thing. What, John, John, we're in the year 2021. What's a TV guide? I'm not doing that. Yeah. Hmm. So so we don't know. We've been putting out a lot of ideas for the threat that's characterizing this horror genre town, and I think that's good. We know it's more grounded. We know that there's some kind of like medical lean to it, thus causing our relatively low medicine score. However, what is now? I think we need to start answering the question: what is in this town or this city? Does it still read like a normal place where people live, or is it so ransacked by the threat that it's almost unrecognizable? Yeah, Hmm. Okay. Okay. I don't know if we necessarily modify it, but I think within the context of this setting, we can have it on a sliding scale of, it's more like closer to one is how much it's helping fight the threats. Closer to eight is how much it's helping the threat. Because yeah, yeah, because when you're thinking about the story, like the journey of the characters in this horror story, one of the most immediate elements of horror you can provide is that feeling of there is no security. Like, not to make it this too real, but for many, the police are not there to help you. So if we establish that early on, that will help this place feel threatening, feel help with the horror theme. Okay. Okay. Well, this is a city, so it's going to have like a police force. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, the great thing is that that's actually informed by our previous roll for size. We determined with a five that they are just barely skating by on personnel. So if that's the case, there is no way they're willing to help on some kind of extraordinary threat. Which, mhm, which I think helps inform why we got a five for not threat level. What was it before threat level that we rolled? Yeah, yeah, underworld slash crime level, because there's so few police and they're so unwilling to deal with any kind of external threat. That's why crime has become as prevalent as it is, even though the actual threat presents might be not as immediately severe or like more grounded. Hmm. Yeah, go on. How is? Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I was actually gonna say like it reminds me of in Batman Beyond, fantastic TV show over the past. There's an episode where Venom, the drug Bane used, yeah, yeah, to get huge. That's like starting to get a resurgence, and that's like it's a super advanced technology, but it's a drug that's actively killing you, but it makes you enhanced, super strong, super durable, like fast. Uh, I could very well see there being like oh, in the chat, hello GMG Dave. We are doing a new-ish segment called 60-minute settlements where John and I are going to tool around with a bunch of different like levers and gate and categories and try and build a functioning setting. And this week is this time going to be in a horror setting with relatively low threat level, kind of a low like supernatural level, like a bit more grounded, but high level of technology, low level of medicine, very like decently sized area. So like kind of like a Seattle, Indianapolis kind of thing. Uh, Fantastic, Dave. We'll let you know what our progress is when you get back. He didn't hear me. Sure. Yeah. True. It could very well, a la cyberpunk. It could be stricken with poverty. Well, it's funny because I think last time we skirted away from cyberpunk, and I think here we're skirting a little bit more towards cyberpunk. Yeah, yeah. I'm now thinking much more body horror from like body modification stuff, less so like cybernetics make you a superhuman. Okay, yeah. Hold on. Let me unmute the tab. Try speaking, John. You are not coming through on Twitch. Yeah. Wow. So loyal audience. I'm not getting you. So while John tries to figure this out, I guess I'll vamp for a bit.
Hold on. What about now?
Oh, I heard you.
I I don't know why it's like it should have been the default. Like, why would it reset itself? There's no reason for that.
John, I will tell you why. Your computer's haunted.
No, I think I know what happened.
Uh,
Shoot, that means like pretty much like almost the entire stream is gonna be at the end of the day. It's gonna be okay. So great. So we have a stream that is no, it's not Twitch. It's unfortunately that I didn't realize that on the scene for World Salad. No, I wasn't recording it. If I was, that would have been smart. So
Now, John, the great thing is you do most of the talking in these shows.
yeah, so it's just
So,
been no. I mean, shoot. Okay, well look, let's maybe like recap it starting from here.
okay, John, let's go through all those categories. What do we got?
Wait, hold on. Dead silence. Yeah, now, yeah. 30 minutes of dead silence, and now 30 minutes of me actually talking. No, yeah, I'm glad. Like, it would have been like a complete. Like, it would have been just Jonah talking and just like Well, this is why we need more engagement with the people in the chat. Or like
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
we have to make sure we keep an eye out for that next time. Or better yet, we need to make sure to test the levels. I saw that the stream worked. I didn't double check to make sure that all the volume worked. I thought that I heard myself, but I must have just imagined it.
This is
So,
all a learning process, John.
shoot. Okay, so should we actually stop the stream and then do it again? And then I'm trying to think like what's a good way to do this because otherwise we don't necessarily want to just edit out a good 30-minute chunk. Um,
I mean, I can't really restart the stream at 9:30.
no, 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 no. All right, so let's just maybe start from the top where we're at, because at the very least,
Okay.
like we've got some pretty cool stuff going on. So okay, so
Welcome to World Salad. This is John and Jonah, your faithful hosts, back at it again. We are redoing our smash hit segment from last time, 60-minute settlement, where John and I uh, piece together a place to live or some kind of village, town, what have you, for your next role-playing game session. This is going to be a special edition called 27-Minute Throwdown.
mainly because we just went for 30 minutes without realizing that it wasn't recording all the audio. So great,
Half
fantastic.
the audio. The audience got to hear me, but
So
not
let's
so
do
much John.
let's just do a super quick recap. We have a horror setting. Horror setting, a large population, a lot of technology, but not a lot of medicine. Food is pretty good, so there's not really concerns about food. In terms of, let's say, like supernatural slash like underworld elements, we kind of rolled 50-50. So it's kind of something where there's a presence that's there, but it's probably not very well known.
Mm-hmm.
On an overall threat scale, we rolled pretty low, so we're trying to determine like how that kind of informs what this world is like. There
From a
is
police presence standpoint, we rolled like a 50-50, so we interpreted that as there is just enough of a police element to maintain basic law and order. However, from a helpfulness to uh, not helpfulness scale, we got a 2. The police are not your friend. They are not going to go out of their way to do anything.
right, and what I was about to roll was for resources and wealth. So let's just see how well off the city is. And I rolled a 4, so I would say that's kind of below.
Below the poverty line, I would say, or below average, definitely.
There's money, but it's not easy enough to come by. Like, or let's rephrase it. There's probably a good amount of, let's say, homelessness, jobs shutting down. There's still business and whatnot. Like, things are still proceeding as normal, but it's kind of starting to take a bit of a dip.
Yeah, if there is wealth, it's concentrated towards the top.
We were talking about
So
body horror, but I have an idea.
go for it.
Um, we rolled high on tech. We rolled low on medicine. I'm not crazy because like I don't want to make this like a cyberpunk kind of thing. I want to try to like steer towards like we were talking about with like body horror and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some cool ways we can make that into a horror setting that could actually work as like a campaign or like a
John, duh. It's been staring us in the face this whole time. There are rich people, like at the top of this town, that are using the less fortunate as guinea pigs for their whatever nonsense, like soft sci-fi experiments. Like
They're kidnapping
what
people
what
for
is
organs.
what does every that, or what does every rich person want? Immortality. They've been experimenting on people, trying to harvest their organs or doing what have you to make themselves better.
Now, the
And
only thing I
that's
could
why the police aren't going to help you, because the cops don't go against their rulers.
the only thing I could think of is how would we make that work as like an actual campaign or a game?
So that's not necessarily the focus of this segment. However, I see where you're going. And how about this? The central conceit is that you and your fellow players are, living in this town. You've seen the rise and the fall, second rise, second fall, and things from your perspective are kind of okay until they start to get worse. You're noticing little by little how more people that you see all around the neighborhood are acting a little bit different. They're not quite as chipper, not quite as active, not quite as friendly as they used to be. Maybe you even like get to look at one closely and you see like these incisions and these scars and these like suture marks all around important like organ places,
Or the fact that like people have marks in their necks, almost like vampire bites, but it's just people literally stealing blood.
almost like vampires. Meanwhile, the blessed few at the top of this town are doing better than ever. Like you'll see like TV ads, like other kind of spots where they're just brilliant, vibrant, shining, better than ever. And one person in particular, or one company, is about to unveil their new miracle health supplement drug, whatever it ends up being. And John, let me tell you, Soylent Green is people.
Ooh, wow. That is. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, although granted, that's more of a food shortage kind of thing than like a actual.
Oh no, no, no! Not like food shortage, but like there's enough food. But this miracle drug that's like helping bring people back, it's created from the very people that are now shitty.
I get it. It's literally like that. What adrenochrome? The idea of like people injecting
Yeah.
themselves with like. Hmm. That is interesting. Now, how would you make that to a how would you make that into something that people could play? You know what I mean?
So when I think horror as like a role playing game thing, I'm thinking of a couple things. One is setting up in your setting this element of unease. There has to be Your players have to feel a little bit uncomfortable the whole time and not really know why. The second thing has to be a mystery. There has to be some truth they have to uncover, and in doing so, that's where you can bring more of the horror elements in. Like building ways to have your players just be off put and unsettled the whole time until the reveal. So the green is people, or adrenochrome, whatever it is people. And then they have to deal with it because they're involved. Maybe they become like the next batch, the next trial batch, and they have to like escape people that are trying to catch them, or maybe they got captured and they're trying to get out.
So you make it like almost like a detective game of like almost like a Call of Cthulhu adventure, but the things that you're
Yeah,
researching are grounded in reality. So you
yeah.
and the cops aren't helpful at all, and it's like especially because yeah, if they're doing so like that's an interesting way to take that of like you have a like not so much dystopian, but you have like a very rough situation where things kind of getting progressively worse. Um,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you inspire it based on the idea that like um, And it also works with that threat level we rolled earlier too, because it's mundane. It's only a few people going missing. It's something very small.
Yeah, or
It
not even
it's
going missing. Like they just, yeah, they go missing for a couple
no,
days and then they're
I
back
think
and they're just a little bit worse.
I think it's I don't think you can go full on missing unless you do one of the situations where it's like, oh, I blacked out and woke up in a tub full of ice with my kidney missing, and it's like, oh, that's a funny story. It's like, no, but like, oh, you'd think it's like somebody selling it on the black market. No, it's people stealing it for themselves. So
Yeah,
it's like or like people going missing for like bone marrow and whatnot, and like people are abducted and just drugged out the whole time, and then yeah, like just these. It'd have to be small enough. So that actually could work with what we
yeah,
did for the poverty line. Is that you have the game takes place in a poorer part of town where a lot of people are not going to care about who goes missing, and you have it where the players are the people who live in this area. Each one of them has somebody that they know that's been affected, which they can determine themselves of like
mhm,
how like my uncle went missing. Oh, I've got a girlfriend who like had one of her eyes stolen. All this crazy stuff, and it's like we're trying to get to the
yeah,
bottom of it, and it could all start with like a clue. Like it could be one thing that like, or it even could be like we're trying to get to the bottom of it, and as they like do like a sting operation, this is something that like I'm picturing it less of like a TV show and more of like a movie, of like
yeah. Because
people
like
uncovering something and then kind of stumbling into it, and it just escalates.
Yeah, very much so. Like I think especially when you have your players establish a contact or someone they know that this happened to, as they're playing and they're getting more information actively, they're starting to see, oh, there's like a definitive pattern of things that happened leading up to them being abducted. And then the players realize, maybe at the end of the first session, oh, wait, I saw the same thing happen to me the other day. Like I saw a person in a yellow hat like a few blocks down the other day. The same person that my girlfriend, your uncle, her brother saw.
Right, right.
And then someone else says, "Oh shit, I saw that person in a yellow hat this morning." And then now they realize they're next.
Or
I
just the
think.
fact of like it could happen to anybody. I don't. It's just
Well, yeah, it can happen to anybody, and it's gonna happen to them. So I think when you're building this adventure, you have it where session one is kind of a detective story. Session two is kind of like a fugitive story almost, where you're trying to avoid getting captured. Session three is like a prison break.
right.
Or when I say sessions one, two, and three, like this is your 3-act structure. Less so like the definitive number of sessions within a campaign.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But either way, like I said, I think overall, I think it's something that could it'd take a little bit more work, but I think
Oh yeah.
I think it's got some interesting ideas I could work with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here's my thing. We established at the very beginning that this is a place. This is a pretty big city, but it's not a huge metropolitan area. So now that we actually understand the threat that this place is facing, why here? Is it just because like the normal populace is just slightly below poverty? What's is it because the police are just that not attentive? Like why here?
I think I hate to say it, but I mean, if you want to look at it in one way, I think it can boil down to the fact that it can happen anywhere. That like with how
Love
bad
that.
things
Love that.
like with how bad things can be or how bad things can go, like it very well could be like, well, what's the next step from like the homeless people just being more and more belittled and and police cracking down on them and rights being taken away short of like, well, at some point, like people are just going to start making them disappear. And if
Mhm.
and granted, like if you do it in small enough numbers, nobody's going to notice until it's already a bit too late.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be to the point where it's like, well, those who care enough to do anything about it, even the best that they can do, still can't make this go away. Um, or you do something like a crazy situation, like again, this is a game, it's a role playing thing, so you do something, like something to kind of speed up the clock of like, hey, something crazy happened, and as a result, we need this new chemical, and it's slow to produce, and there's an artificial version, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work. But some people who say that they take it seem to be doing pretty well, and they seem to be doing just fine. And you don't realize that, like, again, I hate to kind of use it as an example, but it's like that adrenochrome thing, of like, this is we've made an artificial synthetic version that works, but it's not as effective as the real deal. So those with money will get it where they can, and those who don't have money will have to
Hmm.
just kind of struggle with the weaker, lesser versions of it.
I also like the idea that, kind of similar to what you were saying, if at the end of Act 3 our heroes manage to escape the confines of, their prison, basically, they like hoof it to the next town over, the same thing is happening there. It's not special. This is just how things are, like all across the land.
Right.
And I think that's how, when you're I feel like horror is a very challenging kind of genre to do in a role-playing setting, because horror relies so much on mood and on building themes, and you need to have a lot of care put into, when you're running it, to make sure that these threads are consistent. And I feel like, to be successful when doing a horror anything, you need to end on a downer note. You need your players to be scared the whole way through. And what better way to end it than realizing, yeah, it can happen anywhere, because it is.
I I think it's more so just good horror in general is just like at how unsettling it can be, but also that realization of like, you like survivability is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like in a horror movie, like yeah, like unless something is really like playing with the genre, it's like anybody and everybody could die until you
Hmm.
figure out who's the last person, so to speak. So in a horror game, a good horror game would have to do a good balance of, it has to be intimidating and scary. The threat has to be real. It has to be at least reasonably survivable. Like in a game, you don't want to make something that's unsurvivable. That's maybe a little bit
Yeah.
unfair to the players. But at the very least, and this might be the last thing, is that you you need to articulate that this is deadly. Like there is your character, there's no death saves. It's like, yeah, maybe you have like an
Yeah.
adrenaline surge, but it's like your character's not going to get healed up. If you get hurt or messed up, your character's going to carry those scars for a while. Especially if this is something that takes place over, let's say, like the course of a night. Like you
Hmm.
do it in real time. Like each session is essentially like an hour of what's happening, and it's like, all right, like you.
Yeah, I think this is a great scenario for Dread. For those of you not familiar, Dread is a role-playing game where the core mechanism is you build a Jenga tower, and whenever you, as the player, want to do something, you make a number of pulls from the tower. And if the tower collapses, something bad happens. Usually your character ends up dying.
I think this would work really well for a Dread game.
Yeah, and I think with the three-act structure we set up, in the first act where they're uncovering the mystery, you set it up where, yeah, if the tower falls, like something bad happens to you, but whatever, not a big deal. In the second session, tower falls, you're captured. No offense or buts, you're in the next trial group. Third act, if the tower falls, you don't escape, you don't make it out. Like, you
Right.
die or worse.
Right. So, yeah, I think this is something that is very interesting for, or like I said, it would work for like almost like a like a modern Cthulhu game, but the stuff you're
Mhm.
investigating is like it's like a cult, but it's a cult that has a lot of power and influence and
Yeah,
resources. So it's like it's a cult that like you can go to the cops. The cops are gonna probably side with the cult, you know.
yeah, because the cult is very much lining their pockets.
And if you go sci-fi or not sci-fi, you go dystopian enough, it's like okay, if you make it something where there's like a crazy virus or some insane medical issue that a lot of people need or have to survive with, it's like, it's very easy to kind of point that as to something where um, that thought was in my head and it just went out. It's very easy to, let's say, make it where those who, let's say, you might go to for help are just as equally in a way to hurt you.
Yeah,
Like imagine like think as crazy as it might sound, think is almost as if like the way that I'm picturing it in my head is like if the COVID vaccine, the only way to get it was to steal it from other people. Like you literally steal the
oh
antibiotics from
god,
somebody. So it's like, yeah, like you just do something like that crazy medicine kind of insane technological thing. But that could
I
work. That could like if you're doing like a horror game where you want to have something that's like, relatively grounded but where it's also still has that equal amount of horror. It's
mhm.
like no, there's not werewolves and zombies running around, but like cops will throw you into a van so that some rich dude can drill
I
into your
was
neck and take all the antibodies out from your body and then dump you out
I
somewhere.
was about to say, yeah, for the cops, if it looks like one of the characters is onto it and is trying to go to the cops for help, the police officer just arrests that person, calls up the corporation, and just
Well,
says,
that's
"Here,
that's
take
that's
it,
more of
take."
like that's more like a mechanical thing of like how much do you want to have it where, and again,
Yeah,
like in a campaign like this, how do you have when there's no monsters? How do you balance dangers, risks, and threats? And you have to have like crooked cops, private security firms, even like gangs. It could be that like the rich hire thugs to abduct people, and they use them in like in a human trafficking situation. There's a
yeah,
lot of horror there that you could use. That's like
it's horrific. It's truly
right.
horrifying.
And on a deep level, it's one of those things of like it's right. It's not like a major supernatural horror, but it's so human and unsettling that that's what's the scary aspect of it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's a very interesting take, and from where we kind of went from and where we got, I think the trick was getting that high tech and low medicine thing was perfect for like you have a scenario where, and then also like the fact that like high population, low poverty. No, I'm sorry, high population but
Population, high
high
poverty.
poverty is like a great way to say like how do you then solidify that into an idea where I want to run a horror game in a modern setting in a very large populated town, but there's not a lot of horror there. And then you have to
Mhm.
go a more human approach to that horror and play with that.
Yeah, the real monster was people all along.
Right. And then, yeah, like, it ties back into that thing you were saying before about, like, Soylent Green. I mean, and granted, like, you could easily play around with it. Like, if you really want to, like, tweak some of the knobs and the buttons and whatnot. So it's like, all right, I want to make a vampire game. Well, instead of blood, they're literally just stealing organs. You have
Yeah.
like old people, rich people, who are so desperate for maintaining themselves that they're literally stealing from the poor
Hmm.
as
Yeah,
as much as they could
instead
literally
of
do.
instead of a drug they're trying to bring to market, they're just, hey, my kidney's failing. I'll go take a fresh one from the pores.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like much like anything we do here, it is modular and hopefully scalable to whatever it is you want to work with at home. We're just the ones trying to inspire you to really do the interesting, fun work with your group at the table.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we have 5 minutes left, which uh, either means we did this in 25 minutes or 55 minutes, depending on how you want to count it. Either way, I think we have a good settlement.
Yeah, I think
I
we
would,
had some. It's a very different take than last week, and
yeah,
I
like,
think it's just because like we started like knocking out some ideas, and then like once we kind of latched on to that like that floating barge
mhm.
idea or whatever, like it kind of really took on like a new life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like we focused a little bit more on the actual settlement last time because
I think the
we
idea kind
had
of
a
called
better
for it.
we had a better grounding with the genre. With horror, like the thing you have to develop first and foremost is the threat, I feel.
Right, right. It's
And
like with a
and
yeah with a horror game, the setting is like unless this like with a
unless the
horror game,
monster
you
is the
need to
town.
yeah you need to define what's scary,
Yeah.
and the town can only do that to so much of a degree because it's not like
Yeah.
the town itself can play a part of it, but it's also like what's in the town, and that's
Yeah.
where
I
it kind of takes on a new life, you know.
yeah, and I think we made it so that the elements of this town helped serve the goal of it being a horrific setting. And I think ultimately that's what we were supposed to accomplish tonight. And we did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's part of it. You know, part of the whole thing about world building is that it's not always a matter of just defining locales and stuff like that. It's like sometimes, depending on where things kind of go, like
Mm-hmm.
if we even because if we had horror, I guess part of it would have been to define like maybe there's some other things we could have determined like how modern, like that might be something to determine like time frame. Because like if we had a high population town and if we decided to make well, I mean you also could say if we rolled low on tech,
Mm-hmm.
like that could also have been a part of it too. Like
Yeah, like we can interpret each of these categories a little differently based on the genre. Like obviously if last time was cyberpunk, we know we're like 20 minutes into the future. Whereas here with horror, it could be the past, it could be the present, it could be the future.
it
So
could
we
just
can
as
use that
equally
tech to determine where on the timeline we are.
it could just as equally be that we landed in some like medieval place or locale and then had to figure out well how does that work out, and it could be
Yeah.
that almost in that case like a low horror fantasy game is almost just like D&D, and that there are monsters out there, but that's why we just don't go out where the monsters are. Just stay local, stay safe, and
Yeah.
like yeah,
More
like the
like
guards aren't going to do anything to help you, but at the same time they're guards. As long as you don't leave the castle or the town grounds, like you're going to probably be fine.
yeah, more like a lamentation of the flame princess than a D&D.
Right.
Which I don't know if that game is canceled or not. So I don't know if I can talk about
Uh,
it.
I know people were not happy because of the artwork and stuff, but was there any other reason why?
It is very upsetting artwork most of the time.
But
Yeah,
did it get like did it get labeled problematic for anything else, or was it mostly just that kind of stuff? Like I'm wondering if
I
anybody.
I don't know. Viewers at home, let us know if Lamentations of the Flame Princess is problematic. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but I think the game itself is still very nice.
I mean, it's by design. It's meant to be like kind of like almost like grim dark in the sense of
Yeah,
like it's meant to be like this is weird and everything is meant to be as dark as possible. But like less like death metal and more just like no, like there's a person legitimately peeling and eating a baby. It's just what it is, and it's just like that's gonna stick with me for a while.
anyway, John, you got anything to plug?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Catch us on Wednesday morning at 6:30 for over coffee. Basically, D&D is not a thing right now, but we might end up doing something again with Friday nights. We'll alternating Friday nights. And other than that, that's it. Hopefully, just gonna keep working on the store and see what comes out from that.
Sounds good, John.
All right, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Catch us all next time on World Salad.
Be good to each other.